Good morning, everybody. It is that time. It's week 14. It's the Blitz. Here we go again. Let's do this. And we are back. We are ready, man. It's that time again. I can't believe it. It's do or die for a lot of people out there. If you've been following us, hopefully we've been taking you ready to the promised land. And we're not even really worried about this week. But if you are, man, we are here for you. So we got the best in the business. We got on my left, we got my man Joe. Joe, how we doing this morning?
Yeah, man, last week of the regular season. And it's a tough bye week, too, with the Commanders, Jonathan Taylor on bye. This is it. This is it. A lot of 6-7 and 7-6 teams. Do or die week this week. Hopefully you control your own destiny. If you need a little bit of help, may the chips fall your way today.
Yeah, I'm in a league where I am 5-8, and believe it or not, there's a way I could end today with third place underneath my belt. That's how crazy this league's been all season long. You've either won a ton or you've lost a ton, or you're right in the middle with the rest of us, which is 8 of us, and it's crazy. So it's and then also with me this morning is down below is my man Jeff, covered up in the Sox stuff and the Patriot stuff, which is gross, but we'll still accept you. What's going on, brother?
Yes, sir. Sunday morning means it's time to get out of that kitchen and rattle those pots and pans. Final week of the fantasy football regular season, and my hopes and dreams are on the shoulders of Kirk Cousins, which is not very optimistic. So we shall see.
That's a bad scene, but I've been there, man. Like, I do have 2 leagues, in fact, that I'm in right now where CJ Stroud is going to be my starting quarterback today because that's the options I have. Hopefully he can still pull it off on a bye week. I'm really not counting too much on it, though. We're going to go ahead and get this thing started off. Speaking of bye week, who else has taken a bye week this week with injuries, Joe?
Yeah, I mean, we're good at quarterback, but running backs definitely took a hit last week. 49ers, now we know, are down both McCaffrey and Jordan Mason pretty much, well, at least for the rest of the fantasy season. So Q, name I can't pronounce, to start at running back. He's 5,400 on DraftKings. What do you got here? Isaac Guarendo. And, I mean, he's all over the waiver wire in all leagues. I mean, 5,400 actually is not that cheap for a running back making their first start on DraftKings, but he's getting play there. It's going to be really interesting to see how that plays out. You know, you got the Raiders who got to go with Abdullah again, and I believe, what's the other guy's name? McCormick, I think. You know, it's just amazing. You're week 14. You got a 9-4, 8-5, 7-6 fantasy team. You've been on the beat all season long, and these names that we're throwing out this week that are going to play really, really relevant roles in the fantasy landscape are guys that weren't even on draft boards in the deepest of deep dynasty leagues starting the season. That is the poetry of fantasy football. It looks like Bucky Irving will play for the Bucks. DeAndre Swift looks like he is going to play for Chicago. We have got Breece Hall out today. This is a new one for the Jets. So that makes, what's his name? I'm already forgetting.
Braylon Allen.
Braylon Allen as the starter there. Kenneth Walker, yesterday we found out not starting or not playing for Seattle. Zach Charbonnet will get another start there. And I mean, I would feel like people would feel decent about him just because he does get some consistent action even when Walker is playing. That's a huge game for Seattle, too, at Arizona. So a little messy from a running back perspective. Wideouts not as bad this week. Wideouts, actually, Devonta Smith back for Philadelphia. Malik Neighbors is going to play for it looks like he's going to be active for the Giants, but it looks like he is not going to be his normal self or get his normal snap count today for the Giants, so don't start him. George Pickens is questionable. He's likely to play, but will have to test his hamstring in pregame warmups. And, other than that, not too bad at wideout. Jacoby Myers, questionable, going to play, it looks like. So we're good there. Looks like Dalton Kincaid's going to miss another game for Buffalo at the tight end position. We know Taysom Hill's out. So that's Jermaine Johnson. Dallas Goedert out again. So you got the Italian guy there in Philadelphia. And that's really where we are. He should be catching passes from Tommy Cutlets this week, but that comeback did not last too long.
It's crazy. It's almost going to be easier to say who is healthy in the NFL at this point, like 100%. But it is also, we're talking about week 14. These guys get banged up. A lot of them are going to go up in there, and they're going to be playing for everything. So they're going to be still startable. So we're going to go ahead and get right into the questions here. We're just going to pop right here with our man, Trans-Siberian. How we doing, our Ukrainian man? Says, hi, guys. Since laughing at my running backs, half PPR, give me 2 running backs out of this pile of crap. Hunt, Etienne, and McCormick. His tight ends are Hawk and Ferguson. His opponent had Jacobs. Oh, my Christ. Jeff, lead us off here.
Well, geez, I mean, that's a tough position to be in with those 3 choices at running back. And 2 out of the 3, I mean, you got McCormick. He's Raiders, I believe, correct? And then you got Kareem Hunt, Etienne. Those guys, all of them are running back by committee on each of those. I mean, Kareem Hunt has been productive, but now you got Pacheco another week back in and seemingly probably will get more of the workload. Etienne has more carries than Bigsby. McCormick, I don't know what to make of the guy, really. So if I'm taking out of those 3, I'd have to say Hunt and Etienne, just because Hunt might get you that carry down by the goal line. Etienne has some opportunity here and there to get some passes out of the backfield. I don't like the choices, but I'll go those 2 and leave McCormick out. What do you guys think?
Joe, what do you got here?
I think, and I've been keeping a beat on this only because Amir Abdullah is going to be my fantasy playoff fate in my most important league, which is fun. I think I would actually play McCormick. He got 17 carries over the last 2 weeks, 13 carries last week. He looked okay. No White, no Mattinson again. So it feels like McCormick slotted into the early down work and Abdullah's getting the third down work in the passing downs. I don't love it, but I think from a volume perspective, McCormick's probably actually going to get the most touches out of these 3 guys. And then, with Jeff, I would agree with Jeff on the Etienne side. He got 13 to, I think, Bigsby's 7 carries last week. Mac Jones is the starter there, but they're playing a Tennessee team who got lit up last week against Washington too. I don't love Etienne, but he should get you double-digit touches potentially, so to sniff the goal line. Leaving Hunt out, Pacheco and Hunt, neither of them were great last week, but Pacheco did look better. And I got to assume he slides back in to more naturally take that starting role. I do think Hunt can be serviceable because, especially like DFS perspective, he's going to be super cheap. And he probably still does get close to double-digit touches altogether, too, for the Chiefs. I just think I like McCormick's volume here a little more.
To me, you almost have to – I like Sincere McCormick. It's weird to say. But again, this is week 14 football, so we're going to be talking about some crazy guys here. So McCormick is a good one for me. Hunt, I almost want to play Hunt over Etienne. That's how bad Etienne's been all season long. He hasn't scored since I think it was 2022 was the last time he put it in the end zone. And I don't expect that to be any different today, although I do see an uptick in volume against the Titans, which probably aren't going to get you very far ahead, but just even in my DFS, I'm going to be starting Will Levis because that Jacksonville team is so decimated right now. But man, Hunt could very easily accidentally fall in the end zone. But for me, I think it's going to be Etienne and McCormick here for a volume play. Pacheco was really leading that backfield, so I'm leaving Hunt out right here. So I don't know if that helped you at all. I think we gave you almost 3 different answers right there, but hope all is well.
Well, we forgot. Let's give him the tight end one too. I forgot about it.
Yeah, I'm sorry. I missed it. I missed the tight end one too. So I'll say of those two, I'd go Hawkinson. He's just getting more targets. It seems like Jake Ferguson has kind of almost gotten lost in the shuffle on that Dallas offense and hasn't been getting really many targets at all since Cooper Rush has been there. So go Hawkinson for me.
I don't hate Ferguson coming back from injury, but I like Hawkinson here too. It's a big game for Minnesota home against Atlanta, and I like the targets he's been getting since he's been back.
Yeah, I'm gonna lean Ferguson here just because I don't think that there's a whole lot of options there in Dallas, but I don't mind the Hawkinson play here either. But yeah, for me it's Ferguson, but it's pretty close. Let's see. We got April Gilbert. Man, this lady hates me, I'm sure. She says, guys, I need help. For wide receiver, I have DJ Moore and Jackson Smith and Jigba in. He could replace either with Waddle or my goodness sakes, could replace either with Waddle or Cooks. What do you think? Also, for my flex, I have Pacheco and Hubbard. Could replace those. Luckily, she can't hear me. She's at work, so.
Well, luckily, she didn't add any scenarios in there where it could replace Mike. So yeah. I'm glad she's leaving you in the lineup for at least one more week.
One more week, I'll be playing. Week 14's always been a tough one for me.
That being said, I'm going to go, from her point of view, I'll give the typical man point of view here. And if it's not broke, don't fix it. I think if you got Moore and he's questionable, but as long as we know he's active, Moore and Smith and Jigba, I'm not moving those guys for Waddle or Cook. And Pacheco and Hubbard, I don't think I would replace those with. I feel pretty good about that foursome in general.
Jeff, I'm going to go ahead and let you hit this next because I have my own opinion there as well.
I'll tell you, man, luckily it worked out for me regardless, but I had the scenario last week at my flex position of DJ Moore or Kareem Hunt, and I went Kareem Hunt because we always say Ty kind of goes to the running back, and that hurt tremendously. So DJ Moore has been getting more targets, been way more involved, and seems to be maybe the number one option there for Caleb Williams. So you're definitely not replacing DJ Moore with Waddle or Cook. Same thing with Jackson Smith and Jigba. I think we talked about it the last couple of weeks too. He's turned into the 1 or the 1A that over there in Seattle. I mean, Cooks you're definitely not going to use to replace either one of those. Waddle maybe, but he hasn't been very consistent. So stick with those guys. And then Pacheco and Hubbard. Solid choices. Hubbard didn't have that great of a week last week, but I think he bounces back. They're at Philly. I think Hubbard's just a big part of that offense. We'll see him bounce back a little bit. Pacheco, again, it just kind of depends. And this is the second week back now. Didn't do a whole lot last week. I think he gets more involved, and we'll see what happens with the Chiefs game tonight against the Chargers.
I agree with everything you guys said. I think I'm keeping DJ Moore, Jackson Smith, and Jigba in there. The one guy who I'm going to be sitting is probably Chuba Hubbard. And the reason being is we've seen Jonathan Brooks back for 2 weeks now. He's seeming to get more and more of the volume play of that offense. And it's not even an offense I really want to have a whole lot of production in outside of the passing game because they find themselves behind awful quick and awful lot. Hubbard didn't even have a target last week. I don't anticipate that that'll change this week either. So for me, I'm going to go ahead and go with Waddle over Hubbard. It's not even really close because, like I said, I think Jonathan Brooks has taken over that backfield. I think Jonathan Brooks takes a solid leap forward today and completely dominates that backfield. But you don't want to listen to me. Please don't listen to me because last time you listened to me, you didn't talk to me for 3 days. So
that's a tough one, Mikey, because Miami's at home. And they're against the Jets. The Jets don't have a whole lot going on, but what they do have are halfway decent cornerbacks and safeties.
Sauce Gardner is doubtful today.
Oh, how about that? Well, then that maybe opens my mind a little bit on that one. So thank you for the injury update there, Joseph. So
no, it's interesting because I've been even because when you get into DFS, like Tyreek Hill has gotten pretty cheap. He's under 7,000 on DraftKings, I think, this week. So it made me look at both those guys. Tua has been throwing pretty good lately. I don't know. It's just a hard team to predict at this point.
So before we get into the next question, I've got a question for you, gentlemen, and anybody can comment what their thoughts are, Transab or anybody watching right now. So I made a move yesterday. Like I said, my hopes and dreams fall on Kirk Cousins. Falcons, and Joe and I were talking about this before the show started. The Falcons have lost now 3 in a row. They're tied for that division lead with Tampa Bay. They really had the division locked up pretty good, and they just have slid tremendously, and Cousins has not looked good. Do you think if he pulls another shit show today and they lose, does Penix Jr. get a shot? I added him in our regular league just because I thought that this could be a possibility. What are your thoughts?
It's weird. How the mighty have fallen. Those teams at the beginning of the season were looking so good, so sharp, and now they just look like virtual shells of themselves. It's crazy that you're talking about the Falcons, who've just been getting destroyed on the field lately, are leading their division. Tampa Bay hasn't been any better, right? They've been getting pretty well decimated on the field as well. I think that's a good move. I think that's a good idea. I think Penix Jr. maybe just, if anything, gives that a different perspective on that offense. I think maybe we won't see him today, but certainly if they lose today. But, man, that could be a situation where at halftime, if they're losing, we could see Michael Penix Jr. come out at the second half, It could be that close. So I think that's a great move. I think that's a great grab, especially if you're in a super flex league right now. That would be a great guy to go grab. We're starting to stash benches. We're going to start putting running back handcuffs. And look how well that would already paid off just this week alone. And locking up defenses that have good matchups and quarterbacks in this instance. Michael Penix would be a good one.
Your thoughts on that one, Joey?
Yeah, I think if Tampa wins this week and Atlanta loses, I believe that would give Tampa a 2-game lead on Atlanta. I think it'd be
one game. They're both 6-6, I believe.
Are they? Okay. I don't know if they're going to bench Cousins while they're still legitimately in that playoff race. 2-3 weeks down the road, though, if they keep losing and their playoff hopes are done, then I could totally see it happening. They paid Cousins a lot of money when they traded for him too, didn't they? He got a big time contract there. So I think he's got a little more of a leash. Kirk Cousins is funny, and you got to remember today too, he's going back to Minnesota. It's a really interesting game. Minnesota got lucky last week. They should have lost at home to Arizona. They pulled it out at the end. Obviously, Atlanta needs to win to save their season. Cousins going back to Minnesota. There's some interesting narratives in that game. I'm real curious to see how he plays today.
Yeah, like I said, that's going to be it's going to be tricky. Like most of the time you put that guy's feet to the fire, he really lights it up. So, you sound like you've got yourself protected in both situations, luckily. So if that does happen, you're already short up. Because like I said, that's a good one. That's a great guy to grab in a super flex situation.
Quick. Just super flex. It's amazing. I was looking today, there's one starting quarterback in our super flex league that's available on waivers, and it's Drew Lock. So that it is no joke. If you're going to get a bye week next week, or if there's quarterbacks to be had, don't sleep on waivers this week just because you're not playing for anything this week, because quarterbacks are hard to come by, good or bad, in that situation. And then the last thing real quick is, because they're talking about Jalen Waddle, I mentioned Tyreek Hill. At the same time, we're talking about these rookie running backs who are getting opportunities today. And it is weird as some of these fantasy lineups look at week 14 or your DFS. It's really interesting to me, like Mike Evans, I thought, and especially because Jamar Chase is on Monday night, but Mike Evans feels like the safest wide receiver one play today. So, obviously one of the main, oldest veterans of the, fantasy guys. You got Tyreek Hill, who all of a sudden was good last week. Will he recreate that this week home against the Jets without Sauce Gardner? So all of a sudden, you've got all these guys we've never heard of, but at the same time, level setting it with some of the old reliable veterans. To me, Mike Evans is a safer play than Justin Jefferson right now. Jefferson can't find the end zone, hasn't found 100 yards much lately, whereas Mike Evans with Godwin out is like Baker Mayfield's main target. So it's interesting dynamics week 14.
I'll throw one at you guys. We're just talking about scenarios here. So I've got a bit of a predicament because in both my leagues, I got Ladd McConkey, who's been really good the last 3-4 weeks, right? And I believe he's questionable. That's an 8 p.m. game, so I mean that's tough to it's tough to say right now whether they don't necessarily have to disclose that until an hour and a half before the game. On my bench, I've got Jerry Jeudy, who all of a sudden has become the main target there in Cleveland. I mean, the last 4 weeks, Judy's targets are 11, 11, 6, and 13 with receptions of 7, 6, 6, and 9. And last week he had 235 yards and a touchdown. And I had that on my bench, which was awesome. So along with DJ Moore and Jerry Jeudy,
I think you got to go Jeudy there.
Worked out very well. So, but yeah,
McConkey's a true game.
He's
a true game time decision. Just reading it, and I just feel like there's some guys where I'd probably still leave McConkey in and see what happens. But if it's Jeudy, I don't think that would hurt for McConkey to not play. And you had Jeudy who went for 25 on your bench at 1 o'clock.
Even against Pittsburgh. I mean, what I like to see. What's funny is on DFS or at least on FanDuel, you're looking at Jerry Jeudy at only 6,100, man. So that's to me, that's a no-brainer. Pop that guy in there. That way you can absorb the $10,000 salary that Saquon Barkley has attached to him. So I mean, no-brainer right there.
Jeudy went 6 for 85 2 weeks ago in the snow against Pittsburgh.
There you go.
I think you're all right.
Okay. I like it.
Jeudy looked really good last week, and I'm just wondering if that wasn't, I hate you Denver move, which is crazy because I'm like, I thought that he wanted out of Denver. Like, it's not his fault or anybody's fault that Denver sucked. I mean, they had terrible coaching. Just imagine if he'd have been on that team now. Like, but where was that for 4 years with Denver? 232 yards, and oh man, he looked good.
It's crazy though because it's Jeudy. Elijah Moore's been phenomenal for them, especially since Tillman's gone out. And it's like Elijah Moore's 4,800 on DraftKings. That's hard to resist based on his numbers the last couple of weeks. And then you got our favorite, our show official show tight end David Nwokio. And, other than one bad game recently, he's been really good too. It's hard to ignore them fantasy-wise right now.
It really sucks on that one, man. I had a game the other night where I was up by 35 points, and all that I needed was Njoku to have an okay game and Chubb to have an okay game. And by halftime, I was sweating it because of Njoku. And then Chubb caught that little rub on the outside and for the touchdown. Oh, dude, I was so mad. Still so mad. Pickens is out. Pickens is out today versus the Steelers. That just came out. That just dropped. Pickens will not be playing today. So Calvin Austin uptick. Hopefully he's sitting on your teams because I have a feeling they're going to have to. This might just be another shootout. This could be. I said the same thing last week, though. I said that it's going to be a 10-3 game in Denver. It's going to be real low scoring. And, boy, that ended up being a real barn burner. That was a great game.
I'll tell you what, real quick, fantasy-wise, just because today – Freiermuth is on a lot of waiver wires, and he's had a slow season, but he had his best week last week. In the last couple weeks, he's been getting used more. I mean, he's pretty much their number one receiver going into today. If you lose Pickens, I mean, to your point, it's Austin, and that would make me like Warren more too out of the backfield. I mean, Russell Wilson's been throwing for a lot of yards, and half of them's gone to Pickens every week. So that's a lot. That's interesting. That's interesting, Finn. I definitely like Freiermuth with Pickens out. I think Freiermuth's going to get double-digit targets now.
Since this is an option in my other league, Joe, so I've got McBride, but do I roll the dice and pick up Freiermuth and start him over McBride? Only reason being, McBride, hilariously, has not been in the end zone this year once. Yeah. I mean, the guy's stacking up points, and he's getting usually anywhere from 5 to 10 receptions a game and good for 100 plus yards. But the guy has not been in the end zone. It's just shocking to me.
I wouldn't have the balls for that, but if you could save a couple $100 on your FanDuel lineup and downgrade money-wise to Freiermuth over whoever you have in now, that I would feel pretty good about.
That's not a terrible idea. I mean, Brock Bowers has been on a lot of my FanDuel lineups, but he is expensive. I mean, if Freiermuth can kind of get near Brock Bowers, who looks to be the number one target there in Vegas, would you agree?
For sure.
I mean,
so, Jacoby Myers is getting a lot too, but I mean, Bowers is getting double-digit everything every game.
That guy's a stud. And Mike called that before even the season started. I'm pretty sure, right, Mike?
Yeah, no, I was on that bus. I really like that guy on and off the field. He's just a good dude. He gets stuff done. I wish he had a better quarterback situation, man. That guy, if you give him a good quarterback, good night, you know.
One other thing I'll mention, since I brought up Mike talking about stuff preseason, and like I said, I like to talk when I'm right, but I'll certainly admit when I'm wrong. When the whole Diggs thing went down and he went to Houston and now, you know, Buffalo doesn't have him, I figured Miami, or probably Miami would win that division. Buffalo would be kind of in the middle. You said it would make Buffalo better, and you can see them going pretty far, and quite obviously that has happened. So I'll give you a little credit on that one, Mike, for calling that. I thought for sure that would hurt them and then elevate the Houston offense, which it has not.
You know, I mean, him getting hurt, he was definitely looking really good for Houston, to my discredit, because I said he was going to go there and suck and be a cancer in the locker room. But give that some time to marinate, I'm telling you. But he got hurt in about, I think it was week 4 or 5, something like that in there. And that team just, they just have not looked the same. Even just like him just being there, I feel like has dragged that team down. But yeah, Buffalo's still surging. Josh Allen looking better than I think he's looked in a long time. Interceptions are way down. Something else I said, although the guy does still turn the ball over an awful lot for being an elite quarterback the way he is.
Sure. I mean, and because I'm looking at the schedule and tomorrow night's game, you got Cincinnati at Dallas. Has there ever been a better 4-8 team that you can think of than the Cincinnati Bengals? It seems like they score 38 points a game, but they allow 47 points a game. I have never seen a team like this that should be a playoff team, but all of a sudden is 4-8 going up against Dallas, who also should be a playoff team, who's 5-7, and all of a sudden on a roll a little bit. I have never seen a better 4-8 team in my life.
Yeah, there's ought to be actually a really good matchup between those two teams when you look at the numbers like that. What I think happened this year, Cincinnati always gets off to those like 0-4 starts and things like that, and then they come back and this year they came back and they could not win those very close games that tipped the scales in their favor, and they're just unable to do so this year. Now they're looking at that 8 on the other side, knowing that they're likely out this year and not going to have a shot at the playoffs at all. I mean, I don't think anybody's like mathematically eliminated outside of a few teams, but I think that it's pretty close as far as Cincinnati goes with that start. I think it just finally caught up with them because they've done this season after season, and now they're going to have to come out of that. But Dallas, yeah, they've been looking better too. I think this is going to be a way better game than the records give it credit for sure. This isn't going to look like a 5-7 team playing a 4-8 team. This is going to look like 2 10-3 teams playing for everything. I think this is going to be a really good game. They haven't disappointed yet this year as far as the matchups have gone. Yeah, at the beginning of the season, there was a few like blah ones, but they've gotten really good over the past few weeks. That Denver Cleveland game, man, that was so much better than I thought it was going to be. Like, my God.
And I'll tell you, since I brought up Cincinnati, if you drafted Jamar Chase, my friend, you're most likely in first place, I have to assume, because Jamar Chase has been enormous this year, almost as good as Saquon Barkley for the Eagles. Actually, he probably even has better numbers than Saquon Barkley as far as fantasy points is concerned, but that's just off the top of my head. Maybe they're even, but yeah, if you have Jamar Chase, then you're doing quite well.
Yeah, he's been looking great this whole entire season. He's been just getting touchdowns. Talk about a guy you can solidly lock in there for an anytime touchdown and it pays off. He's been looking really good. What do you think about that matchup there, Joe?
I think there's going to be a lot of parlays that are the over and over yardage for Burrow and over yardage for Chase. And I mean, I would imagine that's going to be a pretty high scoring game. To your point, I guess both of those teams probably feel like they have to pretty much win out to stay alive. Chase Brown, I mean, Cincinnati's, despite their record, is a fantasy bell cow. You know, Brown's been unbelievable at running back for them. You got Burrow, you got Chase, and now even Higgins the last couple of weeks has been really good again. You got Gesicki, who's had a bunch of good games at tight end. So it's a great example of a losing games on the field can still translate. I think when you try to teach somebody who's been watching a football a long time, fantasy for the first time, you have to make them understand that winning the game doesn't necessarily translate into fantasy success. And, you know, this year's Bengals team's a very good representation of that.
Yeah. A different topic, and I apologize for taking off in a bit of a tangent here, but this conversation I had this week, and I thought it was interesting when you look back on things, and we're far away from August when everybody did their fantasy drafts. It seems like the consensus number one pick, you know, from who was the consensus number one pick for the previous season, never pans out to be the guy to do the next season. So, you know, if you look at McCaffrey, last year he was picked first of all, obviously the injury thing. Then you had, you know, Jonathan Taylor, who was the consensus number one, and then he kind of fell off the map. Then you had Austin Eckler, consensus number one, fell off the face of the earth. You had, I mean, even far back as Chris Johnson in Tennessee, who was the consensus number one, and then people picked him first overall. So the person who ends up with, so like Barkley or Chase, you know, who's going to be the kind of consensus number one pick, is going to get picked first next year, and he will not have the same year that he had this year. That never pans out for some reason.
I mean, I was thinking about my own team. I mean, I took McCaffrey number 2 overall in CTNFL, and I feel good about the fact that I'm fighting for a playoff spot despite that. But yeah, that one certainly got me. You know, even if you took Justin Jefferson, who hasn't had a great year, but again, certainly better than McCaffrey. You know what will be interesting next year? 2 guys. Derrick Henry and Josh Jacobs. First of all, Josh Jacobs in any other year other than this would be by far the most valuable non-quarterback free agent move of the offseason. He's been phenomenal, especially the second half of the year for the Packers. It just gets overshadowed by the fact that you had both Barkley move and Derrick Henry move. Barkley clearly is going to be the number 1 pick next year. I don't think there's any scenario where he's not in any redraft or any league where he's in the draft. But it's like you're going to see Derrick Henry and Jacobs pretty much both in the top 5 for running back performance this year, yet they're older, especially Henry. Where would Derrick Henry go in a draft next year will be really interesting to see.
Well, but like you just said, I'm curious about Mike's take on this too. But you know, okay, Saquon's going to be consensus number 1 next year. Odds are he's not going to do it again. Okay, so who is the consensus 12th pick who will probably end up being number 1 next year? Like Chase was probably somewhere late first round. Barkley was probably late first round, early second round, and ends up being number 1. Okay, who's that guy for next year? I don't know if you have any thoughts, Mike, as far as the guy right now who got picked, you know, 10th, 11th, 12th, whatever, who's probably going to end up being the number 1 next year.
Bijan, maybe?
I think Saquon is the answer here. I think Saquon Barkley is the clear number 1. With the numbers he's putting up this year, I mean, what did he go this year? I think you saw some of them going in the top 3, but typically you would see, you know, somebody like Christian McCaffrey. Then you'd see like a Bijan Robinson go. Even Breece Hall. I think those were kind of your top 3 running back picks, and then you kind of started getting down to your Saquons. I think Saquon is a lock for number 1 next year as far as.
But do you think he's going to perform it, though, is what Jeff's saying? Basically, he's using like the Madden cover. The last few years, the number 1 consensus fantasy overall pick probably hasn't performed as well as you would want.
No, I absolutely see him not succeeding at that again next year, having the level of season that he does this year. I think that I can't remember how many offensive line changes Philadelphia has this year, but I think it's like 4 or 5. It's pretty crazy. I know that they were at least focused on that with the Jason Kelce legacy ending. So I could see I could see him being a guy that you get first and he doesn't give you that same expected numbers as you got out of him this year.
Here are his FanDuel numbers by week. Okay, he's only been under 10 twice. So 35.2, 15.6, 34.6, 12.6, 6.4, 28.7, 14.6, 34.4, 8.3, 35.8, 47.2, and 21.7. The guy, so that's 1, 2, 3, 4, 5 times has been over 30 points and actually 34 and up 5 times. That is ridiculous. And you are in position to win each week. And certainly from a DFS standpoint, you can't overlook that, which is why you got to swallow the 10,000 salary if you agree with me on that.
And real quick, one thing in Barkley's defense too, if he wasn't running the ball so well, he'd actually have more catches. Or if they're he's probably not even doing much as he can in the passing game because the running game's been so freaking efficient.
No doubt. I mean, well, I mentioned Jamar Chase compared to him. And Jamar Chase has had some duds here and there, but he has had 29.8, 39.3, and a 52.9 week. That was his 11 reception, 264 yards, and 3 touchdown week, followed by a 23-point week. So Chase is close, but certainly Saquon is running away with it as far as outside quarterbacks are concerned.
Yeah, no, and like I said, and I mean, I just don't like that kind of volume. And I mean, it's crazy that he's actually getting the numbers that he's getting, in my opinion, because that offense likes to run through Jalen Hurts so often, especially when you start talking about within 3 yards of the end zone. I mean, if it's 1st and goal on the 3, they're going to pound it. They're going to try to push Jalen Hurts in almost every single time. But that hasn't seemed to be the recipe this year. But there also hasn't been a whole lot of opportunities where they're within that line where they are doing it, right? So when you have those games where Saquon Barkley has 15, he's still putting up 100 yards in that game. He's just getting it down at the 1, getting it down at the 2, and then Jalen Hurts is finishing it off. So I don't feel like that kind of level is just going to be as consistent as what it was this year. This year he's just been so solid. And again, I mean, you're going to see him go within the top 3, I believe, next year, if not the consensus 101. McCaffrey, boy, he what did he give us? Did he ever give us an over 20 game this year? I don't think. I mean, he only gave us 2 games, but I don't think
he gave us a touchdown. He didn't give us a touchdown this year.
No.
Yeah, and I mean, I don't think that's going to happen now, especially through a fantasy season for sure. But I mean, even daily, I don't think that there's going to be an opportunity where you're going to want to play him, even if he does come back. I'm not too sure. I kind of just checked out as far as going to have McCaffrey.
Real quick though, because I was thinking about the Niners today. They're home against Chicago. Obviously, they need to win. Last week, you can't really count what they did because it was in the snow in Buffalo. Does Debo finally get right? Because that guy's Darius Slayton's having a better season than Debo Samuel. Does that turn around today? And then last thought, and I got a jet, but another old reliable that has come back up this week, Adam Thielen, who came back for Carolina last week, had a huge game. So I'll be curious to see what he does against Philly. But that being said, guys, I've got a jet. Week 14. Good luck to all. Hopefully next week we're talking about wild card, playoff, and round 1 buys for all of us.
And actually, you know what? I mean, with that, we don't have any extra questions or anything like that, so we can just go ahead and wrap her up early today. About 20 minutes short of our typical hour. Make sure you're following us on Twitter at all these handles right here. If you guys have any questions, just hit me or Jeff up. Joe will be tied up. Poor kids. Poor him. I mean, not poor kids. Going on a little road trip with them. But thank you guys so much. Jeff, you got anything to add here, buddy?
Week 14, baby. Crunch time. Get out of the kitchen, rattle those pots and pans. Joe, enjoy the picture taking.
There you go. Thank you guys so much, and you have yourself a good rest of your day, and good luck today, week 14. We will see you guys at the same time next week.